This is IGN. Richard Linklater and an incredible Ethan Hawke thrillingly condensed the life of a Broadway icon into a single legendary night. This is your IGN review of Blue Moon by Sadat Adlaka. While ostensibly a biopic of famed Broadway songwriter Lorenz Hart, Richard Linklater's Blue Moon unfolds over a single evening in 1943. A fun, tragic, and impeccably focused film, its seemingly stage-like presentation soon gives way to wild cinematic energy centered around Ethan Hawke, who delivers a fine-tuned performance as the verbose, balding, 5'0" Hart. Robert Kaplow's screenplay reverse engineers the story from both real reports and apocryphal whispers about one of Broadway's most infamous evenings, opening night for Oklahoma, when Hart's former creative partner Richard Rodgers, played by Andrew Scott, kicked off his legendary run with lyricist Oscar Hammerstein, played by Simon Delaney, and Hart disappeared down a bottle while waiting to toast the creators and the cast at storied after-party spot Sardi's. Despite the compressed timeline, it unfurls entire lives, histories, and relationships from the minutiae of fleeting interactions, as Linklater's theatrical staging takes on greater symbolic meanings while its literal, grounded drama passionately unfolds. Linklater is hardly the kind of filmmaker who demands homework. You don't need to know much about Hart going into Blue Moon, named for the popular standard ballad he penned with Rodgers, and the essentials are summarized through a radio broadcast early in the runtime. While Rodgers and Hart were an impeccable duo, they would arguably be eclipsed in theater history by Rodgers and Hammerstein, an inevitability of which Hawke's version of Hart seems painfully aware. A small man in more ways than one, he's charmingly diminutive, but repulsively, albeit hilariously condescending. Hart occupies an isolated barroom at Sardi's for much of Blue Moon, lobbing faint praise and catty criticism at Oklahoma until the guests of honor arrive. This sprawling section features only Hart, his bartender friend Eddie, played by Bobby Cannavale, the young bar pianist Morty, played by Jonah Lees, and a quiet writer often seated in the background and soon revealed to be Charlotte's Web author E.B. White, played by Patrick Kennedy. The latter isn't merely a historical Easter egg. Blue Moon's who's who of mid-century New York royalty is purposeful in its construction. Blue Moon, like Hart, has an intense love of language, so the fact that it's largely made up of monologues or swift dialogue exchanges once Sardi's gets more crowded is perhaps its biggest strength. Hawke pours over every word, and Linklater in turn moves his camera along with nearly every sentence, creating a relentless momentum even when nothing in particular seems to happen. These scenes may feel like a filmed stage play, but the moment Hart leaves his refuge and begins interacting with the other guests, the more the camera is forced to follow him on an intimate and chaotic journey through his most all-encompassing personal and professional fears. All the while, Hawke is magnificent to behold, chomping on cigars and delivering a wonderfully magnetic performance that radiates specific and familiar, as in snobbish and presumptuous, energy of the era's New York theater scene. He speaks in movie references, searing literary criticisms, and knowing riddles that reveal both adoration and desperate self-loathing. And while Hawke's stagey comb-over reveals the distinct borders of his actual hairline, the shaven portion of his forehead makes him seem almost like a monk worshipping at the altar of transformative art house performance. It's the kind of acting born not from showiness, well, not only showiness, but from a deep and thoughtful understanding of the character. Hart may be physically centered, and his purpose on this particular evening may simply be to congratulate the cast and aggressively bump elbows with Rodgers on occasion, but Hawke imbues him with a melancholy verging on destructive. It's widely believed that the party pushed Hart off the wagon for good. He was dead just 7 months later. His mouth says one thing, usually something polite or passive-aggressive, but his expression betrays a deep, internal void born from fears of obsolescence. The blue-eyed Hawke wears jet black contact lenses for the role, but you can see the whole world and all its terrors swimming in his eyes. In sharp contrast to the shifty, short-statured Hart, Scott's handsome, no-nonsense version of Rodgers, for which he was awarded Berlin's Silver Bear for Best Supporting Performance, seems to channel Jimmy Stewart. He abhors and abhors Hart in equal measure, eager to please and praise him while equally desperate to grab him by the collar and shake him out of his self-destructive stupor. You can intuit this all from the way Scott gazes upon Hawke. A lifelong journey condensed into a single evening. Richard Linklater's Blue Moon explores the final days of Broadway songwriting legend Lorenz Hart, portrayed by a magnificently melancholy Ethan Hawke, on the opening night for one of his former creative partner's biggest hits. Jealousies and creative anxieties fly as Hart tries to maintain balance through friendly conversations, all while the specter of World War II hangs overhead, posing the question of what makes art, artists, and audiences tick during difficult times. Blue Moon's IGN score? 9 out of 10. Thanks for listening to IGN. My name is Tony Jackson, and for the latest Blue Moon updates, visit us at IGN.com.
Spoken Layer.